Hi, my name is Catherine Gloston, and here is my module for discussion on the TPAC adoption. So for the points for discussion, first I'll go over the objective, then I'll talk about what is TPAC, the influential factors of TPAC adoption, a reflection and relation of TPAC to my workplace, a conclusion, and references. So our objective for this module was to apply TPAC in a real-world educational setting by considering the factors that may influence its implementation. So what is TPAC? So it all began with Shulman. And so in 1986, Professor Shulman, he devised PCK, wherein it's the intersection of pedagogy and content. And so PCK, it represents the blending of content and pedagogy into an understanding of how particular aspects of subject matter are organized, adapted, and represented for instruction. Basically, how different how teachers interpret and represent subject matters in different ways that are accessible for learners. And so then Meshra and Kohler, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing their name incorrectly, in 2006, their article, it discussed technology inside this now mixture. So now there weren't just these, a circle with pedagogy and content, now there was a circle with technology. And so when the three overlapped each other, there were pairs that were created and a triad. And so the pairs that you notice, one was already done with Shulman with PCK, then there was TPK, and there was TCK. And so they realized that technology knowledge was also essential. And so technology, pedagogy, and content, they were the central for developing good teaching. And that's how we got those pairs and the triad. Now, TPAC is defined by Common Sense as a model that helps teachers consider their knowledge domains intersect in order to effectively teach and engage students with technology. And so TPAC, it represents a class of knowledge that's central for teachers' work with technology. And so this knowledge is where it requires an understanding of the representation of concepts using technology, those strategies that we use with our technology, they have to be thought of constructively so that we're able to teach the content. And our knowledge of what makes concepts difficult or easy to learn and how technology can help redress some of the problems that students face. And so we have to have a knowledge of our students and their prior knowledge. And that's also something we also need to know about our knowledge of technologies, and those can help us as well. So we have to know about the existing knowledge for ourselves as well as our students. And then you'll notice that they have this nice big old circle around everything, and that's where it talks about the context. And so the context is the dotted line, and basically it's that each school and each classroom, they have these unique and complex dynamics that we must consider when we are talking about technology, pedagogy, and content. The Voltheifer et al. 2019 study was a survey of 842 teachers at 541 institutions in the 50 states of the United States. The purpose of the study was to understand technology integration preparation and accredited teacher preparation programs. So factors that influence TPAC adoption. So Voltheifer et al., they listed some characteristics and also some factors to understand the TPAC adoption. So some of the things that they noted down was technological knowledge, years as teacher educators and K-12 teachers, types of academic appointment, self-rated TPAC score, highest degree offered at their institution, their perception of institutional support, and their individual adoption of ISTE standards. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight on is that they did study, it looked at the institutional size and the type, and they couldn't find any trend of a relationship between adoption rates and sizes and types. But the study, it tested the highest degrees offered at institutions and found that institutions offering postmasters or doctoral degrees, they had higher rates of TPAC adoption. Another factor that was looked into was the perception of institutional support, and it related to learning technologies. According to Voth-Heifer et al., there was a significant association between TPAC adoption and perceptions of support in relationship to staff collaboration, support, and student and instructor IT support, and professional development opportunities. And another factor that's stuck out to me was the implementation of ISTE standards in teaching. So according to Voth-Heifer et al., the more a teacher claims to align the lesson with the ISTE standards, the more likely a teacher responds yes to TPAC adoption. So inside the study, they actually, in the survey, they asked certain questions for technological knowledge, such as if the teacher educator, if they have the skills they need to use the technology, or can they learn the technology easily. And they asked some TPAC survey questions, such as, does the teacher select the technology they use in their classroom to enhance what they teach, how I teach, and what students learn. So those were just some of the factors that they noted down, but they asked inside of the survey. So now to reflect on the implementation of TPAC in my workplace. So one of the things that I do is I do help with 8th grade math. Although now I've officially been promoted to Dean and Technology Coordinator, I still have to help on the math and science side. So one of the skills that my 8th grade math class is on is scientific notation. So to be able to kind of pair these, I can look at them from individual standpoints, then into pairs, and then into the triad. So when you look at the content knowledge, it's basically what are you teaching? So in this case, it would be for my students to basically have this solid understanding of exponents so that they understand scientific notation. So it's basically exponents and scientific notation. The PK is how do my students learn best, and the instructional strategies. For my 8th graders, that classroom discussion and collaboration, so group work, is how they work the best. And then the technological, or the TK, is the digital tools. So we're using Go Math, so there is a personal math trainer. I also use quizzes, and Kahoot is available, and GoodNotes is basically where my students, they take their notes and they're able to actually collaborate with each other. So those are the digital tools. So now for the pairs. So PCK, TCK, and TPK. So the PCK is the understanding of the best practices for teaching the specific content. So here I know that small grouping is the biggest thing that's going to work for my students to be able to understand the exponents and scientific notation. The TCK, so here is where I know how the digital tools available to me can enhance or transform the content, how it's delivered to students, and how your students can interact with it. So here I may start off, that would be like my quizzes and my GoodNotes. Those are the digital tools that are available, as well as my math trainer, my Go Math trainer, and how they'll be delivered on my technology, and then how the students can interact with it is basically, I know that on quizzes they're able to answer the questions and get immediate feedback. I know that on Good Notes they're able to write on it and take their notes. All right. Then next up would be the TPK, which is understanding how to use your digital tools as a vehicle to the learning outcomes and experiences I want. I know that my Go Math trainer is going to give them that interactive practice. And so that's something that they can do on an individual basis. So that may be an individual strategy. But I know my Good Notes is basically the strategy wherein we're going to get into our grouping. And we're going to use Good Notes to collaborate. And then as a whole class, we can use the quizzes or the Kahoot. And that would be that classroom instruction. And where they'll be able to get that feedback from that. So all of this would then lead up to the overall TPAC framework for the math lesson. So it would go according something like this. So students would watch an interactive video with Edpuzzle on the Promethean board, and they'd be able to select their responses on their iPad. So nobody would be able to see what they selected. Then from there, the students would break into small groups and they can work on questions using Good Notes, where they're able to collaborate to solve problems and provide peer review discussing. Finally, after that, the students would then work on an exit ticket using Formative on their iPads, where I can actually see their work as they're writing to give them immediate feedback and redirection. So the example here is from a article by Hansen et al. And in this article, this study was actually where teachers were presented with a fractions lab, and they were to be co-designers to basically improve the fractions lab. So here they have utilized the TPAC framework and revised it to come up with an better understanding of how the TPAC framework is applied to the fractions lab. And you'll notice that it's annotated with 3 exemplary instances of Jonathan and his actions and reflections that lie with the intersection parts, the TPK, the PCK, the TCK, as well as the TPAC. So in order to understand those, you'll notice that one, you needed to know about like the content knowledge, the pedagogical knowledge, and the technological knowledge. So the content knowledge, or the CK, it's basically the using and understanding of fraction representations. The PK is thinking about how to help the children learn more effectively. And the TK is basically the technology, so the tools that's going to help them be able to add fractions together. And then you have the overlaps. And so the overlaps deal with like the PCK, which is the transformation of fractions content for teaching, so tailoring it to the student's needs. The TCK is understanding how technology and fractions content can influence and constrain each other. And then the TPK is the understanding how technology can change teaching and learning. And then finally, there is the overall impact, which is the TPAC and those characteristics. Basically, it's the technology integration in their teaching around a specific subject matter that is the basis of effective teaching with technology, requiring an understanding of the representation of concepts using technology and how technology can help redress some of the problems that the students face, and knowledge of how technologies can be used to build on existing knowledge, to develop new or strengthen old learning. And so that was an example, and it was used for a fractions lab professional development activity. In conclusion, one of the wordings that Mishra and Kohler used that really summed up everything for me is, in other words, merely knowing how to use technology is not the same as knowing how to teach it. So we have to remember that we shouldn't let technology take over the lesson. Remember, the content and the pedagogy are very, very important as well. And we must realize that technology is constantly evolving. And with the change in technology comes a need to rethink the pedagogy and the content being utilized. So making sure that they all work together to make our lessons effective and our students actually be able to have access to them as well as understand them. Here are my references. Thank you, and I welcome any feedback.